Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020. And this is our Mindfields section. I did a Mindfields, I think, on Tuesday, and this is the second one this week. I try to do it at least once a week. I know I skipped last week because so much going on. I don't want to miss anything. But welcome everyone. Hey, Tyrone and Mobster, you guys are terrific. Hey, I got something for you. Here you go. This is my friend Oscar, and he wants to say thank you. Okay, yeah, thanks. Hey, Corky, Mark, and David. Wow, all the heavy hitters are lining up this morning. Everybody wants to know how it was. How did Doug Valentine get William Colby to talk? Well, that was George Webb's question last night, and he said that he really thinks that Colby had a need to unburden himself. We've heard George describe the little church that's, right, it's where's my finger, right over there, but you wouldn't know about it unless you were on a small boat and able to get into that particular part of the river, of the Wacomico River, to see it, and then go and explore it. It's George has told us how he has come up with an idea that perhaps Colby had hidden some files there at that little church, and I like that idea. The idea that he could get on his get in his canoe from his home over here across the water from me, on the mainland, not on the island, but he's on the mainland side of the island waterway there called Neal Sound. Well, to get on his canoe and go around the point and come in to the church there may very well have been one of his common things to do, and it was between there that his canoe and his body were ultimately found. So anyway, the Corky wants one of the birds. Well, Corky, you're such a terrific commentator, and I'm tempted to send you one just because I like you so much. Yeah, these guys are great. I'll let them sound off one more time. Just this one's for you, Corky. There you go. Let's see. Is that so, Mobster? I didn't know about the Indian mitten. We certainly have an incredible amount of oyster shells. There's a whole layer of oyster shells under the soil here. It's about a foot down, more or less. And if you're trying to set a post or something, you're going to have to dig through that very hard layer that consists of oyster shells all around, all over the island. I think if you dig a hole, you're going to run into that. Now, the idea of oyster middens makes a lot of sense when you consider that that's where the oyster canning operation was going on, right over there. I mean, just on the point that Colby would have had to go around to get to the church. Well, let's get around to our topic for this morning. What is the secret? How do you get somebody like Colby to open up? And maybe George is probably right that Colby has a conscience and was feeling maybe open for whatever reason at the time that Doug Valentine approached him. Well, we have Doug's own testimony here in this book, and this is what happens to me, okay? I was searching around for a topic this morning, and this book caught my eye, and I pulled it out of my shelf, The CIA as Organized Crime by Douglas Valentine. And you know, of all the Doug Valentine books that I've studied, I haven't really studied this one. I just kind of leafed through it and pulled out some stuff that I thought I could use. But here's what I think is really the interesting, you know, from a metaphysical point of view. Why was it that this book called out to me this morning when the very first chapter is this? So, well, Kathy Sue, this is here you go, Kathy, look, here you go. And how do you know this is a she? I think it's a he. I think his name is Oscar, but maybe it's Olivia. It could be Olivia. If anybody knows how to tell the sex of an osprey, let me know and we'll sort it out. I mean, that's what we're all here for, is to investigate the deeper questions of life, right? Okay, sweetheart, you stay there, okay? Don't fall over. There you go. Some birds just don't know how to perch. Hey, George is with you at NNS. Thanks, guys, and neighborhood guys. So much to have you. So nice to have you here. So, anyway, this is a gift from me to George and all of you. Chapter 1: How William Colby Gave Me the Keys to the CIA Kingdom by Douglas Valentine. The investigative writer James Tracy did an interview of Doug Valentine and was published in July of 2015 at a site called Realpolitik, Politic, titled Interview 56, Doug Valentine. And that's 2015. So that's not that long ago. Tracy asks a question. You've been doing historical research for close to 40 years, and I wanted to ask you how you orient yourself toward a project, how you know where to look for information that's pertinent to a given story. And you know, George, I know you're out there listening, and I have to say that this story reflects to me very much what I know of you and your first book about your father, and it resonates from there. So, and also your comprehensive knowledge of literature, which obviously Doug has too. These are very common threads between you guys. So let's just read some more. His answer: it's complicated, and my experience was different from other writers and researchers I've spoken with about it. From the time I started college back in 1967, I wanted to be a writer. Pardon me. And since then, my philosophy of life has been based on the study of language and literary criticism. I have a very broad approach. I started out studying Greek and Roman literature, reading the Norton anthologies of English and American literature, taking courses in classical myth and the Bible. Very early in my studies, I was introduced to literary criticism, to people like Robert Graves, poet and author of The White Goddess, and Sir James Frazer, who wrote The Golden Bough. Frazer brought a socio-anthropological way of looking at the world of literature. That led me to Carl Jung, Eric Newman, Northrop Frye, and a few other people who approached literature from a variety of different perspectives: psychological, political, anthropological, sociological, historical, philosophical. All those things were of interest to me. When I look at a subject, I look at it comprehensively from all those points of view. Pardon me again. Literary criticism teaches the power of symbolic transformation. Hang on to that. The power of symbolic transformation, of processing experience into ideas, into meaning. To be a Madison Avenue ad man, one must understand how to use symbols and myths to sell commodities. Ad men use logos and slogans, and so do political propagandists. Left or right doesn't matter. The left is as adept at branding as is the right. To be a speechwriter or public relations consultant, one must, above all, understand the archetypal power of the myth of the hero. That way you can transform through words Joe the plumber or even a mass murderer into a national hero. Well, there's some power. That's a mystical power. The study of the archetypal myth of the hero. That was something I spent some time with maybe 20 years ago. I had a huge Joseph Campbell phase. I watched all of his videos. I watched the interview with Bill Moyers. And Bill Moyers, by the way, is an insider. Let's not kid ourselves. An aide to Lyndon Johnson during the transition from Kennedy. He's inside. He knows. Says a lot of good things. Does a lot of great reporting, but he's inside. He knows. Okay. So, the power of the myth of the hero. So what you can do if you want to understand, what Doug's talking about is just read Joseph Campbell, read The Hero with 1,000 Faces, because this is his thesis is that civilization itself kind of comes along. He starts with Gilgamesh. And I don't think we have anything older than Gilgamesh, at least not in the Western tradition, that we can look to, and he identifies the hero myth in that, and then of course from then on everything, all the religions, all the philosophies, all the writers utilize the hero myth. When I decided to research and write about the CIA's Phoenix program, that was how I went at it. I went directly to William Colby, who'd been the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Colby was the person most associated with Phoenix, the controversial CIA assassination program that resulted in the death of tens of thousands of civilians during the Vietnam War. No one had written a book about it, so I wrote to Colby a letter and sent him my first book, The Hotel Tacloban. I told him I wanted to write a book that would demystify the Phoenix program, and he was all for that. See how Doug is using his understanding of the archetype of the hero to say, hey, here is unexplored territory. I invite you, William Colby, to enter that territory as our hero. Teach us about it. Give us your story. And it worked. But I also approached it from an organizational point of view, which is absolutely essential when writing about bureaucracies like the CIA or the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, of course, that we studied in Strength of the Wolf not too long ago. You really have to understand them as a bureaucracy, that they have a historical arc. They begin somewhere, they have a congressional mandate, they have a purpose and organizational and management structures. And in that regard, I really lucked out. One of the first people I interviewed was the CIA officer Nelson Brickham, who actually organized the Phoenix program. Brickham graduated magna cum laude from Yale and was something of an organizational genius. He explained to me how he organized Phoenix. He also explained the different divisions and branches of the CIA so I'd be able to understand it. So I lucked out. Through Colby, I had access to the people in the CIA who created the Phoenix program, and I was able to find out what was on their minds and why they did what they did. That never would have happened if I had gone to the Columbia School of Journalism. Now, George Webb, that comment has to resonate with you big time. Isn't that a beautiful thing to read in connection with, with you, with your work, your ability to conduct journalism without having to go through the filter of a Columbia journalism school. Or if I'd been involved with journalism for many years, I'd have had a much narrower way of going at the thing. But the CIA officers I spoke with loved the broad view that I was bringing to this subject. They liked me asking them about their philosophy. It enabled me to understand the subject comprehensively. Once I had Colby's approbation, many CIA officers thought I was in the CIA. No one had heard of me. I wasn't Morley Safer or Seymour Hersh or someone who'd been a celebrity reporter in Vietnam. I was a nobody in the Eduardo Galeano sense of the word. I'd published a book about my father's experiences in World War II, which some of those guys would read. Those who did read the Hotel Tacloban tended to like it because it was sympathetic to the soldiers and showed I understood what it means to be a soldier. Most CIA officers consider themselves to be soldiers. The CIA is set up as a military organization with a chain of command. Somebody tells you what to do, and you salute and do it. Evan Parker had that feeling about me that I would understand him personally, why he did the things he did, because I'd written this sympathetic book about my father as a soldier, and because Colby sent me to him. I had an interesting experience with him. He invited me to his house for an interview. Also, for a year before I started interviewing people, I'd read everything I could find about Vietnam and the CIA. I was knowledgeable, plus I looked like a good Methodist. I wore a suit and a tie. We spoke for an hour, and Parker got to like me. I hadn't asked him anything about the CIA. We were just getting to know each other, but he had a stack of official-looking documents on his coffee table. He glanced at the documents and politely said he was going down to get us some tea and cookies. Quote, "It will take about 15 minutes. I'll be back." He winked and went downstairs. I opened the top folder. It was a roster of everybody in the Phoenix Directorate from when Parker started it in the summer of 1967. I started furiously writing the names and ranks and the position they held in the program. 15 minutes later, as I'm writing the last name, he yells up from downstairs, "Doug, the tea is ready. I'm coming up." I closed the file and put my notebook away. He came up with a tray of tea and cookies on it. He winked, sat down, and I started to ask him about Phoenix. Let's skip a little bit just to cover as much as I can. The documents Brickham gave me showed in his own words what he was thinking when he created the Phoenix program. They are part of the collection titled The CIA Speaks. I put them online, so my critics can't challenge me on the facts, other than by making up things, which they do all the time. I just quoted from these documents and my interviews, so it is accurate reporting. Tracy, there is a Douglas Valentine collection at the National Security Archives at George Washington University. Valentine. Yes, the collection contains my interview notes with close to 100 CIA officers and military officers involved in the Phoenix program. People kept referring me to people, and I made some great connections. I met a guy named Tullius Acampora, who recently passed away. He was in his 90s. He'd been an Army counterintelligence officer and worked for General Douglas MacArthur in Shanghai after World War II. Man, wouldn't I like to talk to him. Because look at my dad showing up in Shanghai after World War II on the Nashville. The things that went on in Shanghai, that's huge. So maybe, and George and I were at the National Security Archive at George Washington University this past summer. We were welcomed there. We were able to get right into the archive itself, and very helpful people there. I want to go back. I want to see if we can find these interviews, because it's going to tell us more details than can possibly be jammed into a book or even a half dozen books. When the CIA was formed, Tully, like many Army and counterintelligence officers, started working with the counterintelligence staff at the CIA. He was detailed to the CIA. Although he kept his military rank, Tully was a CIA officer for many years. And how many times have we seen CIA officers just come sliding in now as colonels or, majors or even generals without, paying their dues in the military? Or the FBI, where people are coming in the back door there, as George has documented. Tully was sent to Vietnam in 1966 and was involved in one of the anti-infrastructure programs that Phoenix was based upon. Tully's program was called Contact 4, and like Phoenix, it targeted civilians who were functioning as secret agents for the Viet Cong. When the CIA and military created Phoenix, Evan Parker moved into Tully's office. Tully knew the top Vietnamese officials and CIA officers in Vietnam, and he also knew the Italian Americans who were prominent in the Bureau of Narcotics, and later the DEA. Tully and I became personal friends, and he introduced me to senior people from the Bureau of Narcotics and the DEA. The same way I had entree through Colby into the CIA, I had an entree through Tully into federal drug law enforcement at a high level. I met historically important people and got historically important documents, most of it new history. I haven't gotten around to digitizing the tapes, but there are separate collections at the National Security Archive for both my CIA Phoenix program materials and my federal drug law enforcement materials. And of course you can read more about that in The Strength of the Wolf, or listen to my articles or my episodes. Tracy, I'm wondering how the former governor of Pennsylvania and Bush administration officer Tom Ridge fits into all this. Was he not involved in Operation Phoenix? And isn't it interesting in the context of Pennsylvania being right in the crosshairs of the Trump lawsuit today? Valentine's answer, I'm not sure about Ridge. He was in an infantry unit in Vietnam from late 1969 until 70. He worked in a team with 4 Americans and 7 Vietnamese soldiers going after insurgents, not North Vietnamese regulars. So he was part of the pacification program. He got a Bronze Star for killing a young man carrying a sack of potatoes. He may have been a sniper and he may have been involved in one of the programs Phoenix coordinated, but it doesn't seem like he was a Phoenix advisor. Ridge had been a governor and had executive management experience when he was appointed to run the Office of Homeland Security and later the Department of Homeland Security. He was a political cadre who could be trusted to implement Republican Party policy. At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security was based on the Phoenix program model Nelson Brickham had developed in Vietnam. Look, this is huge. Okay, the Phoenix program came home to roost when they created the Department of Homeland Security, and Tom Ridge was part of that. Ridge may have had some related classification experience, which is what Homeland Security is, but he certainly understood how to manage organizations. The key word is coordination. When the national security establishment wanted to centralize the war on terror here in the United States through the DHS, they copied how Phoenix had coordinated multiple agencies in order to streamline and bureaucratize the war against the Viet Cong infrastructure, VCI. Phoenix proved an incredibly successful model for pacification in South Vietnam. It was the silver lining in the Vietnam War. Politically, the war was a disaster, but bureaucratically, the Phoenix program succeeded. It became the model for CIA operations in Central America, the Salvador option. The Phoenix program established intelligence operations and coordinating centers in the provinces and districts. Those were the PIOCs and DIOCs of South Vietnam, which we read about in the Phoenix program. Similarly, the Department of Homeland Security has created fusion centers, and there's George Webb resonance again, fusion centers in every state and major city across the country. The fusion centers coordinate all the agencies in an area exactly like IOCC's PIOCs and DIOCs did in Vietnam, systematized and computerized. They coordinate contributing intelligence analysts and operating units. It's the same highly bureaucratized system for dispensing with anything and anyone who can't be assimilated. Resistance is futile, says de Borg. Tracy, that's an ominous set of observations for someone who has studied the Phoenix program in such great depth. You are saying that the Phoenix template is something that has been grafted onto the American homeland. Valentine, absolutely. And I'm not the only one that talks about it. David Kilcullen, that's Kilcullen, was a counterinsurgency advisor to the Bush and Obama administrations, and in 2004, he called for a global Phoenix operation. Are we now facing the global Phoenix operation in the form of the World Economic Forum? I really want to know the answer to that. Is this the Phoenix program descending upon us to provide us with pacification services? Well, looks like a lot of our channels are getting disappeared, and a lot of people are also dying untimely deaths. Serious business. Tom Hayden described Kilcullen as, quote, the chief advisor on counterinsurgency operations to General David Petraeus. Should start with a B, I think. General David Petraeus. Quote, in planning the 2007 U.S. troop surge in Iraq. He also served as chief strategist in the State Department's Counterterrorism Office in 2005 and 2006, and has been employed in Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa, and Southeast Asia. In a section titled, quote, "A Global Phoenix Program," unquote, in his 2004 article, Kilcullen describes the Vietnam Phoenix program as, quote, "unfairly maligned and highly effective." Dismissing CIA sponsorship and torture allegations as popular mythology, Kilcullen calls Phoenix a misunderstood, quote, "civilian aid and development program that was supposed by pacification operations to disrupt the Viet Cong, whose infrastructure ruled vast swaths of rural Vietnam. A global Phoenix program," he wrote, "would provide a starting point for dismantling the worldwide jihadist infrastructure today." As part of its congressional mandate, the CIA has the job of counter-subversion outside the United States. Thus, when the U.S. is waging a counterinsurgency in a nation like Iraq or Afghanistan, the CIA pursues a political order of battle, while the U.S. armed forces pursue a military order of battle. In practice, however, counter-subversion during a counterinsurgency is a paramilitary police function. Thus, in South Vietnam, the U.S. military supported the CIA's Phoenix program with troops and equipment. In 1969, the CIA ostensibly turned the Phoenix program over to the U.S. military, at which point soldiers first began to pursue a political order of battle and conduct systematic counter-subversive operations against foreign civilians. The creation of Phoenix was a watershed. Prior to it, military people were only allowed to target civilians if they were secret agents or guerrillas attacking military bases or personnel. But in its fanatical pursuit of victory in Vietnam, the military deliberately blurred the lines between subversives and innocent civilians, and killed anyone who got in the way, including children, like it did at My Lai and 1,000 other places. Following its ignoble defeat in Vietnam, America was driven by a reactionary impulse to reassert its global dominance. The justifications used to rationalize Phoenix were institutionalized as policy, as became evident after 9/11 and the initiation of the War on Terror. Since then, the CIA and U.S. military have been conducting joint Phoenix-style operations worldwide without any compunctions, most prominently in Afghanistan and Iraq. Also evolving was the relationship between the CIA, the military, and the media. In Vietnam, there was more press freedom and the carnage was filmed and shown on TV every night, but the CIA and military felt those images turned the public against the war. So by the time America invaded Iraq in 2003, reporters were embedded in military units. The media became a PR unit of the military and the CIA. While I was researching Phoenix, I went to people like Seymour Hersh and Gloria Emerson, but they wouldn't talk to me. I had a harder time getting reporters to talk to me than I did CIA people, because as soon as they expressed any knowledge about Phoenix, the follow-up question was, "Why weren't you writing about it?" Then they'd have to reveal this gentleman's agreement with the CIA. While I was doing my interviews for the Phoenix program, certain CIA people would tell me how a particular correspondent from CBS or the New York Times would come into their offices and ask about the programs they managed. The CIA officers would talk openly about their operations, but the Vietnam era correspondents wouldn't publish the details because their editors had a gentleman's agreement with the CIA not to reveal the secrets. They could know the secrets, and as long as they didn't reveal them, they could continue to have access. The old boy network existed in Vietnam, but it's gotten a lot worse. It's impossible now for anyone to interview mid-level CIA people on the record and reveal the facts. Since Iran-Contra, the bureaucracies have instituted incredible obstacles that make it impossible for people to see what's going on inside their private club. The public is totally reliant now on whistleblowers, like Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, who are then vilified, imprisoned, and or chased into exile. Tracy. What we see, for example, happened to Gary Webb in the mid-1990s. He had some people who had divulged significant information to him, and yet the CIA denied it, and that more or less cost him his career. He had no one, no colleagues of his, who actually went to bat for him to any significant degree to help him in the industry, because what he was doing is what investigative journalists and historians such as you should be doing. That's Tracy talking to Valentine. Valentine, yes, Gary Webb was an investigative journalist whose Dark Alliance series in 1966 exposed the link between the CIA's Contras in Central America and a crack cocaine dealer in Los Angeles. The story rattled the CIA. Members of the black community were up in arms. Then the CIA's old boy network sprang into action, and Webb was nitpicked to death by fellow journalists for minor inaccuracies in his work. Take a note of that, George. Like I see people trying to, nitpick little things. And, those nitpicking comments, when I see them on my page, I take them down. Because these are trolls, in my opinion, in my mind. If you're doing that and you're not a troll, then you just haven't studied much. So don't nitpick. Thank you. Webb committed suicide in 2004. But he wasn't the first American citizen to be attacked for telling the truth about the CIA's central role in drug trafficking. In his 1972 book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, Al McCoy detailed much of the CIA's drug network in Vietnam and the Golden Triangle region of Laos, Burma, and Thailand. When the CIA found out what McCoy was doing, one of its most senior executives, Cord Meyer, tried to get McCoy's publisher to suppress the book. When that didn't work, the CIA tapped McCoy's phone, and the IRS audited his income tax. Behind the scenes, the CIA forced McCoy's sources to recant. The famous Church Committee, which exposed a lot of the CIA's secrets, investigated McCoy's allegations and found the CIA innocent of any involvement in drug trafficking. McCoy moved to Australia and didn't return to America for 11 years. The CIA's control of international drug trafficking is America's darkest secret, and after the Webb scandal, the old boy network imposed even more restrictions on the media. The pressures the CIA imposes on the media amount to political warfare directed against the American public. It's no different than how the CIA mounts counter-subversion operations overseas. Nowadays, the only way you can discern what's going on is by studying and understanding the historical arc of these bureaucracies. Where did the CIA come from? Where is it going? If you look at it historically, you can see beyond the spin, and it becomes demystified. And that is not a happy story. As power gets more concentrated in the security services, the media is no longer simply compliant. It's functioning as their public relations arm. It simply ignores anything that contradicts the official line. Well, I want to stop there, but I'm interested in your comments. And just to take a moment and put all this together. So what we're hearing, what we're studying here, is the progression, the arc of the CIA. And it goes back to World War II, and it goes back to the transition from OSS to then the State Department's OPC, and directly into the CIA, created in 1947. We know the arc from there because we've studied the Dulles brothers with Stephen Kinzer. We've studied the Blowback book last Wednesday about the stay-behind armies that were often imported here into the United States. And these are not just, dummies with guns. These are people that are politically astute, that can come in and help to use their ethnic group, say, Lithuanians, for example, as a voting bloc, and use that to get the favored candidate of the CIA elected. And how long has that been going on? Well, it's been going on since then. Now, the CIA, having subverted SACSA and then kind of swept it off the table with nobody looking, has control through its JSOC and SOCOM of the military assets. In order to sustain their control, they have to have the American people under an illusion, under a spell, a magic spell. See, they know how to use the tools of Carl Jung better than we do. Doug Valentine, clearly a master of understanding the philosophical, psychological, anthropological. That's what the CIA does, of course. They put it all together, too. And with computers and analysts out the wazoo, they can do a psychological number on you and you don't even know it. And they're doing it. And as Doug just says, right through the media now is the public relations arm of the deep state, the CIA. So, and they've clammed up. They're not going to talk. And anything that's said that might uncover the CIA's management of the international drug trade, well, you get the Gary Webb treatment. Well, somehow Doug has pulled it off, Doug Valentine, and I am so tremendously grateful to Doug for spending some time with me, helping me understand my father's role in the book TDY. And now we're focusing on exactly when that happens, in 67. How did my dad get away with it? He's working right under their noses. Like the SACSA up until January of 67 was General Pierce. Well, General Pierce was in on the opium all along, ever since World War II, when they were flying what they called the hump in this China, Burma, India theater. He was an officer that was part of the heroin shipments. I mean opium shipments. Opium shipped from Burma into, I used to call it Chongqing. I don't know how to say it in Chinese. Shang. Anyway, the capital of the Chiang Kai-shek nationalist China during the war was the city in the middle of China called Chongqing in bad English. So that was the deal was the opium was money. It was lots and lots of money. It was money to pay soldiers. It was money for bribes. It was money, to take care of your people. Because that army was surviving on opium as money as opposed to having any real money, because Chiang Kai-shek was printing money faster than anything, just like they're doing here in the Federal Reserve right now. Inflation plus opium makes opium more valuable than currency. Reminds me of old Maryland when the money was hogsheads of tobacco. They had no cash. They had no coins. They had nothing. But tobacco was worth something, so they used that for money. And opium fulfills that purpose as well as many dark purposes. But as money, it works in certain circumstances, and that was the money of the Second World War in China on the nationalist side. Hey, Mark, have I heard of the Burma bridge bombers? No, I haven't. Sounds like a good story. Yeah, and now, finally, we're going to say, as Tattered Playlist points out, that Trump has now ostensibly rerouted the CIA's control, undercut them. He's cutting their budget for special ops, and he's putting their operatives under the command of the Pentagon. So now all we need is for Trump to win the election, and all this stuff will start to get better. Yeah, the opium producers did get paid in gold, that's right. Or silver. Of course, silver is the traditional currency of imperial China. But anyway, the point is that the General Pierce, who was the Saxa, my dad's boss in '66 and '67, was well aware of the connection between the U.S. intelligence, CIA, OSS, and the opium dealers. So there's my dad working under there, but seeing this go on in 1967, and we think probably in February, he launches this TDY operation to try to catch those bastards dealing with the opium lords on videotape and still photos and observations. Well, we know the CIA won that round, but it doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of ground gained on our side. I mean, the book itself is evidence. And the quality of Doug Valentine's research and writing is so spectacular that nobody can really succeed in contradicting him. Well, that's my content for today. I salute George. From the bottom of my heart, I commend his work to everyone. Don't be discouraged. Don't let them turn you around. Follow the W. Have a great day. Happy anniversary, Corky. Happy anniversary, my friend.